You're not locked into where you are. You have more opportunity than you may realize.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, a podcast where you will find a mentor moment in every episode. We are meeting incredible women from around the world with real stories and learning from the moment that changed it all for them. I'm your host, Rani Alfers, and I'm ready to introduce you to our next guest. Hey everyone, welcome to Working Women Mentor. I'm your host, Rani Alfers, and today's guest is Kirsten Lum. She is the founder and chief technology officer of Stoytellers.AI. Kirsten has such an incredible excitement for machine learning strategy and all things data science. You will find so many nuggets of both technology and mentorship in this episode. In fact, she has the pleasure and amazing experience of working every day with one of her mentors. And I won't spoil the episode for you, but you have to know that having this conversation with Kirsten is almost like doing a deep dive into what the future of all of our businesses will look like. Also, how viewing mentorship and people around you and learning makes such a difference. She had an incredible career through Amazon, through working with teams that you can't even imagine. And she took that experience and leveraged it and moved into an entirely different company that she's building right now. And her transition, her leap is an incredible story for all of us because she herself is a mentor and has mentor moments to share with all of us today. So let's jump in and meet Kirsten. I promise you're going to love this episode. So, Kirsten Lum, welcome to Working Women Mentor. So thankful to have you. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, we have so much to talk about today, so I'm very excited about it. But would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
My name's Kirsten, and I am the Chief Technology Officer of Storytellers.AI, which is a consultancy that helps smaller organizations, things like higher education institutions, local government, small businesses, to use some of the machine learning and AI technologies that really have been used mostly in like the Fortune 100. And we're helping them to see how these techniques can actually help them grow their organizations as well.
So intriguing. Just everything about this world and AI and machine learning is so interesting. But before we get to that, we do ask our guests to text a friend or a colleague. And what would they say about you? How would they describe you to us, Kirsten?
So I did the homework and I got very consistent answers across the people that I asked. I asked some family, asked some coworkers, asked some friends. And the number one thing that came back is communicating ideas clearly, emotional fortitude, and joy was like a term that people said often. So, and I resonated with that. I was so happy people kind of picked up on that idea of like, positivity, but also making some of these things that may feel really esoteric to people accessible and interesting.
Because it's not easy to do. And what a compliment to you. Were you surprised by anything they said?
I wasn't exactly surprised. I will admit, I'm one of those people that this was a stretch for me to do because I'm so like talking about myself in that way is so hard. And that is, I think, what I was most surprised by was when I saw the homework, how much of a reaction it was to be like, okay, I'm going to need to ask people directly what they think about me. And even when they said nice things, you can feel the discomfort of like, having the gaze of
It's a great takeaway because it's an exercise in vulnerability, right? It's so fun because we just never take the time to really do that, I think. And it's an odd question. So when you can put it on like, hey, this podcast I'm going to be on, then it's not really you asking, right? And then they're just excited.
right.
You get to hear all the good stuff. So I think it's a great exercise. So, okay, all the lovely qualities that you have, is there anything about your earlier years starting out and to where you are now that has shaped who you are? This wonderful person who's able to communicate clearly, has joy in the world. How are you feeling about that?
I would say, I talk about this sometimes where if someone was to tell my younger self that I would be doing this, I would have been totally appalled. I was a complete, like, in the 90s, you used to talk about like right brain, left brain. And I was just all left brain, like all creativity, all just like I do music, I do theater, I would do art and writing and reading. And that was really what I loved. And so what's interesting about this question is it's not like there was a seed that I go back and I say, "Oh, I definitely could see why I got here." I actually started as a completely different path, and it was through the process of following my passions and also getting into jobs and finding what I actually liked about working and finding those moments where like, "Wow, I actually that didn't feel like work. That felt like fun." And then connecting it back to those creative elements, that journey was multiple decades of going through. So I would say most people look back and wouldn't have guessed. But I think what's surprising is that in the world of technology and with development and in machine learning, there is a surprising amount of creativity that you need and an ability to see the world in different ways. That I think really I drew from that as a
I would
child. Yeah.
absolutely agree. And as you were talking, I was thinking creativity, right? Because what you do in this world, like even just intertwining different, you have to be, I can't imagine how creative you have to be to do what you're doing right now because you're not thinking about just coding or things, right? You're actually thinking of how can we make all of this happen and then probably drill down from there. But that's that fun creative exercise, I bet.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I mostly for people that are thinking of a transition into like big tech or other technology companies that I try and tell them because oftentimes people are a little bit resistant of like, I don't want to learn Excel or I don't want to learn. I'm like, it's actually way more fun than you think. Like it's way more creative than you think it would be.
That's good advice. When you think of starting out in your career, you worked for really large companies. I mean, you were with Amazon and Expedia. So you started there and then you decided to open your own company and start from scratch. What was that journey like from leaving these amazing opportunities and starting something that you knew would be the best for you in your future?
It actually was while working at Amazon that this idea started forming. And the idea really came from this realization that I had as I was a manager of data scientists and economists and software engineers in this large company. I'd have these projects that I was working on for various parts of Amazon. Say we're working with Amazon Music or some other part of Amazon. And we're building these machine learning applications and we're seeing how beneficial it is for their organization. Things as simple as which of our customers do we need to reach out to right now because they're maybe about to stop using our service. And I'm seeing this benefit to these various parts of this big company. And I'm also seeing how much it takes to manage that talent, how hard it is to find a manager of data scientists, and how hard it is to do all of the technical aspects of it as well. And then pay all of those people, right? Like these people command very high salaries. And so that really led me to think there's just no way that a university or a library or a local government or a small business there's just no way, even though this would be something so beneficial to them, there's just no way that they could really be expected to use this technique because of all those barriers. And so there's this other thing that I ran into, speaking of the creativity side. I had always really encouraged my team to think in terms of frameworks and scalability as we're approaching these projects. And from some of my peers at Amazon, they would tell me these things like, it's not possible to make a framework for doing this work such that it's more scalable than it is today. One data scientist can maybe produce 4 models a year and that's it. That's a really good pace. But that doesn't work for a small business. And so I'm thinking, how do you do 100 applications in a year? And of course, everyone's like, no, that's way beyond.
Okay, Kirsten, I also have a feeling you don't like no. You're like, we're going to find a way to do this.
Yeah, that is a really strong thread to my whole career, especially and this was a something, I'm reaching back now into my experience at my first job at the startup that I was at. The GM introduced me to this concept that you have to look for the iron triangle, which is in a lot of cases it's like speed, quality, and what's usually that what was it? This iron triangle, there's 3 of them. There's speed, there's quality, and there's price and you get to choose 2. That's kind of the adage. It's like you either can get it fast and expensive, or you can get it it'll be fast and cheap, but the quality won't be good, or you can get it fast and high quality, but it'll be really expensive, right? And he introduced this concept to me that you look for those iron triangles, and if you can break the iron triangle, then you have an advantage in whatever discipline you're in. And so I see that everywhere now, and that was what I was experiencing there. And so I was like, that's an iron triangle. And I know that if we can break the iron triangle, we have an advantage that we can share with all of these organizations that we work with. And that's what our mission has been. Like, we've got to break the iron triangle. It's got to be fast. It's got to be cheap for them, cheaper than hiring their own data science organization. And it's got to be high quality.
Well, and yes, of course, all of those things. But I love that you had the idea when you were with Amazon. But when you decided to turn that resignation in and walk out on your own and start from scratch, I mean, what was the first 6 months like for you?
Well, there's one thing I could highly recommend personally that makes that a lot easier is doing it with your husband. It's really
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
So my husband and I both he also was at Amazon for a while and he also had led engineering functions and I had planted seed with him. There's something here. And it was right at the time that we were pregnant with our second. And we see, now AI is something that everyone's talking about. But 3 or 4 years ago, even it was much less prevalent, but from the moment that we started testing this hypothesis, we've seen a pretty amazing response from people in terms of like, "Yes, that's something I need, and if you can help me with that, I will be your client for sure." And so we've thankfully been bootstrapped from the beginning, which makes a lot of those transitions. I know sometimes for some folks, the story is very, like, scary, right? For the first few months. And for us, I'm so thankful that 1, I had a partner that eases those fears, like, we're in this together, and then 2, that it was an idea that I felt so passionate about, had been so close to, that the path to actually doing something that others would find value in felt so crystal clear to me, and that's what the story has been like every day, being able to talk to our clients and say, "Okay, this is what you need. Let's deliver that for you." And so it's been a great story that way.
It's interesting because some people would say, "Oh, it was so great because I had the support of my husband's salary while I was, left mine behind." But you guys are both like, "Okay, we're out of here and we're just going all in on the news." So I think that's brilliant. I love it. And to see how crystal clear, I mean, what better line of work to be in than and starting a company that offers something that everyone may need? It solves such a problem and creates so much benefit. That has to be very exciting for you as you're building storytellers.
It's true. I've worked in a lot of different organizations in different capacities, like in marketing, did marketing for a while, did analytics for a while. And this is one of the places that I felt like I could turn some of that more technical information into something that feels very practical for people. Like, oh, if you can tell me that's going to happen ahead of time, which is really all predictive machine learning is like, tell me ahead of time this event is going to happen. That's something that applies to almost any realm that you can think of. So, yeah, I've really experienced that. It connects for people. It's not some esoteric thing.
We've been using, and gosh, I'm sure your days at Amazon, but I think of Alexa just because of how much she did very early on. And we had no idea who she was or people were worried. So it's so funny when you look back at those days. And now you fast forward and with ChatGPT and everything that's just so accessible to us.
What's interesting about it is now I look at Alexa, wow, she's really behind the times. Like in terms of like
Exactly.
ChatGPT can do all these things Alexa can't. And now what's strange is how quickly we adapted to that just being normal, right? Like we've just adapted to, yeah, I talk to AI all the time. It's just a thing. And whereas, yeah, before it would have felt so foreign.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, okay, are you noticing more women in tech, more women in these industries? How is that changing? What's the playing field look like today?
Before the pandemic, I would have definitely said yes. I do think that a lot of organizations are putting in a concerted effort to make sure that, for instance, women are on loops and especially technical loops, that we need to make sure there is a woman there so that we have this representation, that the candidate sees that there are other technical women in that company, and two, that we have this other perspective when we're thinking about hiring. I've reviewed some of the data that has come out. The pandemic really set a lot of that back, and the hypothesis is that because some of the roles in the home, suddenly there wasn't an option where you could outsource some of that work to other people, whether that's daycare or in home care, that kind of went away. And then women took on those roles, is what it looks like from the data. So that really set a lot of those metrics back. And I think that we're starting to see a gain again, but still, even in data science, one of the latest surveys that I really like from Kaggle, which is a great organization for data science. One of their more recent surveys said it's somewhere around 15% of people in data science are women, which is just, it's a tiny amount. And I think there's some aspect of that that there's barriers. It's a fairly dry topic. It's like it's not a sometimes it feels like not as exciting a field. And so I'm curious what will make data science more appealing to women. And that's why I like talking like this. This is actually a field that there are women doing and can become managers in and everything like that.
It's like a public service announcement for data science, women in data science. This is really pretty awesome,
That's right.
everyone. You should look into it. If you're talking to someone maybe even early in their career and they're thinking, hey, you know what? I have some qualities like Kirsten, and that sounds like something I can get interested in. What is the best way to go about starting to look at different fields in data science?
The way that I tend to approach data science is there's really two angles at it. One is you're sort of this generalist that understands data science really well, can apply it in a lot of different places. And then the second angle that you can come at it is from being an expert in a specific field and then adding on data science, you know, capabilities to your skill set in that field. And that actually, the second one is how I came into data science. I was a marketer before I became a data scientist. And so I came at it from the angle of like, well, I'm a marketer. I know that if I had the data, I could make better decisions about how I do my marketing campaign. And then all of a sudden I'm doing more and more data stuff. And suddenly, like, I'm
Yeah, pushed
realizing
over
that's
the
actually
edge.
where I
Yes.
Exactly. And by the way, if you learn how to use data at an organization, you will not get out of doing the data work just as so they're so needed. Like it's really hard to find someone who's able to be like really self-sufficient with data. I've found that for everyone that I've shown this path to, they've all had that experience. Once I started down there, the momentum is really fast where you get a lot of responsibilities over data.
Mhm.
That's more the route where if you went to school for it, you would be like an expert and then you could choose what field to approach. But for people that are in their careers, there is a stepping stone from your current role as a marketer, as a salesperson, into a role as a data scientist by just simply picking up those skills in your own job.
It's time for a quick sponsored ad from EMK Skincare. It's my skincare secret I swear by and love it so much. I bought the company. EMK was founded over 30 years ago in Beverly Hills and is crafted from science-backed research of human placenta and the bioidentical properties to placenta found in nature. High-potency, plant-powered formulas with clinically proven ingredients. Anti-aging is just not realistic, but healthy aging skin is. And it's why this brand is loved by dermatologists, plastic surgeons, estheticians for its healing ingredients and reduced downtime after procedures. It's my secret to glowing skin, even on my busiest days, my travel days, and my longest work days. Visit emkskincare.com to sign up for emails and receive 15% off your first purchase. Now back to the episode.
Yeah. And what great advice for any industry who is listening, whether you want to do data science or not, keep picking up those skills, right? Keep growing, keep evolving some. And you never know which one you might think, oh, this is new to me. And wow, I love it. Right. I mean, just as you
Yeah.
learn new things. So I'm curious on mentorship in your career that you had, because you did obviously work in these larger corporations. And have you had someone who's been influential in your career as a mentor? And what experience did they teach you, or what did you learn from that person?
My favorite story of this actually comes from my time at the startup. It's the same manager who showed this different way of approaching problems in a space where it's like you actually look for your iron triangle and you look for it. And this is the reason why it's my favorite story is because it's kind of self-deprecating. It was my first job out of college. It was my first time seeing how a business ran. I had been working at like grocery stores before I got this job and I had an English degree. So this is very far afield from my past experience. And I was approaching it like I kind of expected it to be other people's jobs to tell me how to do my job. That was how I was approaching it as a very new person into business.
That's reasonable. I mean, I can see how you would, be thinking that way. You're new to it. Yeah.
Right. Right. It does feel and anytime I would make a mistake, it would be like, well, someone didn't tell me how to do it right. And that's why. And he sat me down and he was like, you have to choose to be humble and teachable and to choose the path to be excellent at what you do and take ownership over doing that. That's a very important thing for you to decide whether you're going to do that or not. And I remember in that moment being like, I choose yes. I choose yes that I will be humble, be teachable, and that I will choose to be excellent in my work and take responsibility for the outcomes of my work. And that completely changed the trajectory of my career, hearing that message, and really is what started me down this whole path. And to the twist ending to that is that was my husband, the GM of that company.
Oh, what a great story. You married him.
Exactly. It's like, and that's my other thing is I'll always be appropriate in everything in the workplace, but you never know, if there's that person that's like, it was like 11 months of working together. It's like, it's a really great guy. I should probably marry that.
That's right. You get good enough advice, then marry them. No. When it's
Which
appropriate. When it's
right.
appropriate. Oh, I'm only kidding there. What a great story. What a great story. Well, how then do you two approach mentorship at Storytellers with your team? And I mean, even gosh, you probably find yourself working with customers in that way as well.
Yeah. And, like, I mean, my husband is the master at mentor. He's done for years. In college, he went through years of every Saturday working with people on helping them craft their resumes as they were trying to get new jobs and get, promoted and things like that. And so he has like all of these frameworks for how he approaches mentorship. And one of the things that we take really seriously is giving people opportunities to grow both for themselves. We can provide them a job, but actually one of the more valuable things is we can provide you experience and skills that you can apply to your next job. And so that's one of the things that we take really seriously is understanding what jobs are out there in the marketplace and where there's an employee that's at point A and there's this other point B, and what's between point A and point B is skills and experience. And so then you break down what are the skills and experience you need at point B, and then break that down into projects that you then can complete. And those are your resume bullet points. Like it feels like when you say it like that, it feels so simple, but from the outside, it feels so complicated. But that's as simple as it is breaking down what is the difference between where I am and where I want to be, and then going and doing work that you can show results that you can do the job at point B.
That's really a great way to approach it within your company because it's a selfless approach and it most likely produces the very best outcome for your company as well, right? I mean, for being so selfless, you've got individuals growing and thriving and loving what they're doing. So that must feel rewarding.
Yeah, it matters so much more to me personally that we have provided in all the ways that we can provide for an employee in that as an employee, that we have done our good work there as well. And it's amazing. We have so many people that actually we worked with in other places that are now like, hey, are you working on something? Can I come work with you on something? It comes back. Like if speaking to like employers and mentors out there, that work to help someone get from point A to point B means that you have someone that's that much more skilled that's going to come around in a couple of years and be like, can I work for you again?
I
Yeah.
love that. So then on that same note, how would you speak to women listening who are in the workplace and how maybe they can improve their outreach for being willing to mentor and really finding those people that they can help?
I would say that mentors are in very high demand. And I'd also say that being a mentor is harder in some ways than it appears on the outset, and that it is a little bit of a numbers game. And what I look for is one of the things that I'll do is I'll go through periods where I will take on quite a few people, and invariably, a very large percentage of those may meet with you once and then never speak to you again. And that's one of the hardest things about being a mentor is like you kind of give someone some information, give someone some help, and then they're like, "Thanks," and then you don't hear from them ever again. But at the same time, some small percentage of those people end up being those long-term relationship that you're able to build and see them grow, which is kind of what we get, like, sort of selfishly as mentors. It's like seeing the growth in someone else is really gratifying, and it is a numbers game because so many people I'm surprised at how many times here's my number one test. In that first meeting, give them a small task to complete. They're either going to go do that task and report back, then you've got actually kind of a strong candidate for
Yeah,
as a mentee, and then you can separate the people into the 2 groups really fast. Because the people who don't complete the task, they actually kind of self-select out. Like, they can't go back and have another conversation if they haven't done that task. So, it becomes a really quick way to be like, "Okay, here are the folks that are really hungry and really will use the help that I give."
There's nothing worse, I think, sometimes when someone asks for mentorship or help on topic or something or your views, and they listen and they're like, all right. And they just sort of discard it. Now, you don't have to take all the advice that people give you. You've got to be selective about it. But you really do want to spend your time with people who are sincerely interested in it and who will do the work or who will be engaged with you as well, right? That's a great way for us to all learn how to filter out those around us or filter them in to help them even more.
Yes, exactly. And there's a flip side to that too. So there's the mentor side, and actually becoming a mentor made me a better mentee. I think back on times that I did that. I'm like appalled. Like as a, as a mentee, having to your point, it's like if someone's giving you their hard-earned wisdom, it sometimes feels like you can't give anything back to them, right? It feels like it's a one-way relationship. Actually, one of the things that's really helpful if you're a mentee is just write notes down of what they said and send those notes back to them. I can't say how valuable that is to me. Someone just wrote down a bunch of stuff that I should have written down before, but haven't. Just having the notes. I heard you. These were the points that you made. That alone is so valuable as a mentee. It's something you can do to show you're engaged and to give back in a way to the person who's shared.
That is a wonderful tip for all the mentees listening out there. And also, when we write things down, we remember it. There's so much engagement involved in that dialogue with each other. So, in terms of just workplace, because you are doing so many different things within your workplace and helping people along the way improve their skill set. So, I'm curious, how do you see women evolving their skill set? And what are some simple practices that we could all do today? But when we're thinking about technology, and I ask that, Kirsten, because some people are just like, oh, AI, I'm worried it's going to take over the world. It's going to be a dangerous thing. There's all this fear built into some. Just speak to that person because I'm curious how your views on
Yeah.
it and how to get over that.
The starting place that I'll usually start with folks is to think of technology as an Iron Man suit. So, Iron Man, like there's still Tony Stark inside the Iron Man suit. And so, technology isn't replacing you and it's not replacing part of you. It's something that you wield like a tool. And I'll start there as that mental model. So, how do you build your Iron Man suit? And you think about like, what are the tasks that I need to do on a day to day basis? And here are some places that I usually find there's some technology that can help. Anything that's repetitive, anything where there's a clear set of outputs, a clear way of understanding whether the output is good or not. It's more quantitative rather than qualitative. And places where output can be integrated easily into the rest of your workflow. So I tend to look for those kinds of scenarios. So, an example of that is like if you're a marketer and one of the things that you have to do is come up with a new marketing campaign every week. That was one thing that's really challenging. Like newsletters, right? Like you have to write a newsletter every single week. What am I going to talk about in this newsletter? And by the time you've sent the first one, you're already working on the next one. And that's a scenario where you can take that piece, give it to ChatGPT, give me 100 ideas. Here are the ones that worked best in our last newsletters. These are the ones that resonated the most. And give me some other ideas that you think would resonate with that same audience. And then instead of having to spend the hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in the ideation phase, you get that in a minute and you culture and you're like, yep, this is good, this is good, this is good. And that way you're really thinking about technology as your Iron Man suit. Here's the battle I have to fight every week. Let me get some technology to help me with that. But also you still have control. It's not replacing you. You still have control over, okay, it's just an idea that I get to pick and choose which ones, resonate.
And it's a great way to look at it. The tools that are there are there to figure out how we want to use them, how we can incorporate it to make our workplace better, our personal life better, right? Just what are ways that will free me up so my brain and my energy and all the things that I love to do are now open to focus on that. Like you said, instead of 3 hours of idea generation, I've got 3 hours to do something that I'm really great at. And I think
Yeah,
that's the fun part. I'm hoping that people just stay open minded and curious about what's in it, how it will be great, how can it help you and the world around you.
that's right. There's a bunch of stuff that technology cannot do yet and probably won't be able to do for a very long time. And so putting your time into that bucket of like, this is something that only I can do as a human and as an expert in this space, and putting more time there and less time on the things that could be done by technology. Going back to the creative idea, it makes me spend more time on the things that I love about my job instead of the things that feel mundane.
So how are you incorporating it into your personal life? Like at home, I mean, you guys probably have yourself. I mean, well, I don't know. What are you doing on the personal side? Is it like an automatic date night reminder that Chat GPT is like sending date night ideas over somewhere to you guys, or what's going on?
It's so good. I think that actually is a good product. Someone should build that. Like, here are some
For
information.
all the men out
Girl.
there, 10 ways to date your woman this week. Yeah, I get it.
That actually it's a really good example because I think that AI is going to be similar to that idea that it's like how we would use Google before, of like, where should I go to eat? Instead of only going to the place that you already know. You go to Google and you say, oh, there's this new place. I'm going to go to that new place. And I think that's where AI and a lot of other ML technologies for me in my personal life, how I use them is for, I love this term. It's called an external brain. Have you heard of this term? It's like Notion or other tools like that. It's like having a second brain that's capturing all the stuff that you need to remember so that your first brain is freed up for the day to day. And that's one of the things that I struggle with, to your point about like, okay, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a business owner. How do I remember? Sometimes I'm out with the kids and I'm like, I'm cycling through my to do list because I haven't written it down. And so all I'm doing is cycling through my to do list and I'm exhausted by the end of that. But if you just externalize it, you put it in your external brain, then all those tools just free you up to be like in that moment at that time because it's all saved over there. It just means that you have that less of a mental task in your mind to handle on the day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any favorite gadgets? Anything that you're loving right now and can't live without?
Well, in terms of physical technology, there's a couple things that I've been really interested in, and it really has to do with health. So, number one, that probably the gadget that I use the most is my Whoop band, which is like a health tracker, and it tracks your sleep and it tracks like your stress levels. And because it gives you all these metrics, data for because it gives you all these metrics, it starts to build correlations for you of like when this happens during the day, you sleep much worse at night. And
Ah.
then over time, you can start to learn, like, 'cause it's so individual for everyone. And it's nearly impossible to get a healthcare provider to help you go down that path of like, I just feel bad. Like, how can I feel better? Nearly impossible to find help with that. And the Whoop band has helped us to, if I do a sauna, I love sauna, by the way. That's the other gadget. Isn't that exactly a gadget? But I love our sauna. So I need to do sauna in the middle of the day instead of the end of the day because end of the day, then it makes me sleep worse, but the middle of the day, then I sleep better. And so those kinds of things Whoop really helps with. And then the second thing that I would say is I'm really interested in some of the research around how our mental health is connected to our body and how those two things aren't separate, right? Those are very closely linked. And in particular, I'm interested in the vagal nerve and how various techniques related to having vagal nerve health can improve stress over time. So we just recently got a TENS unit. So it's a very small electrical charge, and your vagus nerve is right behind your ear. That's one of the places where it's most easily manipulated. And so it's a really small electrical current that will manipulate the vagus nerve and it reduces stress. The first time I used it, I was tracking my stress on my Whoop band and it was on a scale of 3. Is that 1? And I started, it goes down to 0, which is like, I only am at 0 when I'm sleeping. Yeah, it was amazing. And so especially for people that you get out of this meeting and you just feel like amped up, like I want to run, I want to fight somebody, I want to go eat a whole bunch of carbs. Yes,
Bottle of red
that is
wine,
like,
anything, right? Like,
yes.
go get your electrical current and zap yourself.
Yeah, that's what I do now. That's at least one tool in the arsenal to bring myself back to equilibrium and like, okay, I can now take on the next part of my day.
How
So
interesting. I absolutely need one of those. So is there any downside of this, like, manipulation of this nerve?
right. For me, I haven't had any negative experiences, and there's lots of research about side effects of it and who should use it and who shouldn't. So everyone should use it under proper supervision and knowing what your health stuff is. But for me, it's really been just positive.
I love that. Yeah, and all the data behind it that you can see, like you can see it benefiting you, and that is so fun. Okay, well, those are great. Well, I'll mention those in our show notes, make sure everyone can find those. So, how, with all of this digital world that you live in, I have to ask about the digital addiction and how you unwind yourself from that. I mean, do you do a screen-free evenings? Is there anything that you're trying out that would help us?
It's so tough. We really like, when I'm saying we, I'm saying my husband and I, because we both do a lot of health stuff together. And we really like Andrew Huberman's podcast, The Huberman Lab. And in one of those episodes, he talks about beware unearned dopamine, which I think is such a great soundbite of thinking about where are you getting this hit of dopamine, like scrolling social media, for instance, is one very common one. And really inspecting it and saying, can I migrate that into something that I'm earning a little more? So things like physical exercise or learning something new. Can I shift my attention from that to something else? And that, I think, is the number one thing I'm learning, is that you can't just cold turkey it. You can't just say, I'm just going to stop on social media and that's going to help you. You actually need something to replace it, because it's some sort of coping mechanism. It's some sort of, you're getting something out of it. So what are you replacing those behaviors with that helps you to choose to do something else instead? And for me, recently, it was I started learning piano, and I got that hit, that dopamine hit of like, I can do it. You see your progress. I can get the dopamine from it, that I'm replacing that cheap source of dopamine from scrolling social media and things like that. So that's number one, is make sure that you're not just cold turkeying whatever digital habit you have, but that you have something to replace it that is healthier for you. Yeah, long term.
That is great advice. So, Kirsten, what is going to be your mentor moment that you'll leave us with today? That one takeaway so we remember you and all that you shared with us.
I would love for people to take away, you're not locked into where you are, that you have more opportunity than you may realize. And the way to unlock those opportunities is by being humble and teachable and finding those people that can guide you down that next step. That's the story of going from working in a grocery store to founding an AI company. That's the story.
Beautifully said, mentor moment. Kirsten, where can everyone find you and follow your journey?
You can see more about Storytellers at Stoytellers.AI. And you can also follow me on Twitter at, or I guess it's called X now, MACHSCI, Scie, which is machine learning and science, MACHSCI on
On
X.
X. Oh, I have to ask your AI domain. Did you? So, okay, I was just reading about the Anguilla and how much money they're now making every month because of their .ai. And I love Anguilla, by the way. And it's such a small little place that desperately needs money, I'm sure. So did you, when you got your domain for .ai, like, did you have to go through them?
I didn't, but what's interesting, because not all like domain marketplaces have the .ai domains. And so there's only a few of them that do, and I imagine those are the ones that are
I'm
working
from Anguilla.
with that. Yeah, that's great. That's so great. I've never been there, but it's so interesting to hear that that's one of your favorite places.
Oh, I so enjoy it. It's so small. And when I read the article, I was so happy for them because I was like, oh, what a
Yeah.
windfall. I think they went from making like nothing to like 7 million a month, something just insane for a little island. Maybe it was a year, but it was a big number for this place just off of
Yeah.
everyone now wanting their domain as a .ai.
Wow, that's so cool. You're happy when right place, right time for someone that really deserves it. Yeah.
Before you go, a huge thank you for being a part of this episode. I hope it left you with a spark of inspiration. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button and subscribe button to stay connected. Now is a great time. Your reviews are the heartbeat of our podcast. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, a review would really mean the world to us. Let's keep this conversation going as well on Instagram at Rani Alfers. Visit us at ranialfers.com for all episode show notes and also to express your interest to be a guest. Please sign up. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, I'll see you back on Working Women Mentor.